Welcome back to another episode of Quick Hits. I'm your host, Tyler Smith, CEO of Health Data Movers, a Sidious tech company, joined by Ken Booth. Today, we're joined by Bryan Dechairo, Chief Operating Officer at G&DX, a leader in genomic testing for rare diseases and a company that's transforming how patients get answers faster and more accurately than ever before. Bryan brings more than 30 years of experience across genetics, diagnostics, biotech, and healthcare operations. In this episode, we talk about the evolution of genomic medicine, how G&DX is helping shorten the diagnostic journey for families, and the critical role that technology and EHR integration, including platforms like Epic Aura, play in making complex specialty lab data more accessible and actionable for clinicians. It's a fascinating conversation about science, scale, interoperability, and ultimately how better data and better integration can lead to better outcomes for patients across the healthcare system. Let's jump in.
Welcome to this episode of Quick Hits. I'm Ken Booth, joined as always by Tyler Smith. Tyler, how are you today?
I'm great, Ken.
Good. Yeah, we're excited because we have an awesome guest. I'd like to introduce Bryan Dechairo. He's the COO of GeneDx. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited about this conversation. And to start with, we want to talk about your background, particularly your career. How did your career path lead you to becoming the COO at GeneDx? And what experience would you say shaped how you lead today?
Yeah. Before I talk about my background, I really want to tell you a little bit about GeneDx. I'm sure your viewers don't know what GeneDx is. GeneDx is the leader in genomic testing for rare diseases. And a lot of people don't know, like, what is rare diseases? Rare diseases are things like epilepsy, autism, learning disabilities, developmental delays, where you see that your kid's missing milestones, cerebral palsy. There's over 1,000 different rare diseases, and together, rare is common. In fact, it affects 1 in 10 Americans today, and half of those are children. And children is a big area of focus of us, but we also look at adults who should have been diagnosed 20 years ago, but the technologies didn't exist, and we're diagnosing the adults now as well. And this kind of goes to the thing that we're trying to end for so many of these kids, which is the diagnostic odyssey. When you have a rare disease, people don't know what is causing your symptoms, and your parents know there's a problem, there's an issue, and we're going to doctors, pediatricians, specialists, geneticists. It takes like 5 to 6 years on average for somebody to go from their first symptom to finally, through this odyssey of multiple tests, multiple doctors, constant care, to find out what is causing your conditions. And this odyssey, maybe 5 or 6 years doesn't sound very long, but when you're a child, 5 or 6 years of your life, when you're first, when you're 1 year old, is so much of your life, so much of the fundamentals of who you are. Imagine going to the doctor all the time and not just having to know what's going on. And for your parents too, the anxiety, the worry, the concern, just not knowing is something that we want to end. We want to end that odyssey and get people diagnosed as soon as possible, even before symptoms. And so instead of 5 years, maybe we're going to get down to 4, 3, get down to 1 year, and then get down before symptoms for these kids, so that they don't have to suffer for all these years, that you can get your answers right away. So that's what we do at GeneDx. We have 80% market share. We're the leader in the space. We've been in the space for 25 years. 8 out of 10 geneticists use our test because we're the leader, and we have the best data to really make these diagnoses for the kids based upon our Infinity database and the information that we've gathered over the 25 years that we've been in business. And so I was really excited to join this company a year ago, but I'm happy to tell you a little bit about myself as well.
Excellent. No, that's I didn't realize that we're talking 5 to 6 years, and like you said, that is a significant portion, especially of a child's life. So yeah, to be able to cut that down is really giving a big part of their life back.
So myself, I have been in diagnostics now for over 30 years. I have a PhD in human genetics. So I've started my career as a geneticist right when the ability to actually look at DNA, called PCR, which we all now know of when we've grown up hearing about it. But when I started my career, it was just invented and it was just licensed by a company called Roche Diagnostics. And that was the first job I had. It was very lucky to be a geneticist and start right at the ground level with new technology. And then over time, I was able to really start to follow the wave of genomic diagnostics through its different periods and epic epochs as it went through. So I was able to work at Pfizer leading molecular medicine, where we were using genetics for the first time to target therapies in areas like Alzheimer's disease and cancer and other areas that, instead of it just being a one size fits all medication, we were able to target medications to subsets of people based upon their DNA. And it was at Pfizer that I learned about like commercial strategy, like really understanding where you want to go. Making drugs is like over a decade long. You better know where you want to go because you're going to be investing for 10 years. So if you don't start with the end in mind, you're not going to get anywhere. And so it was great to learn long strategy at a company like Pfizer. I then went over to a company called Medco Health Solutions, which a lot of people don't know. You've heard about like CVS or Express Scripts. These are pharmacy benefit managers. They're the ones who are paying for all of our drugs, delivering all of our drugs to us, that your employers or other people are insuring you for. It's called a pharmacy benefit manager. And from there is where I learned what I was going to tell you about, which is called the triple play, which is you have to have something that wins for three different people in the healthcare system when you have a technology. It has to win for the patients, number one, but it has to win for the providers and their workflows and what they're doing. And it also has to work for the payers. It has to be cost effective. It has to be worth spending the money for. It has to have good outcomes. And so at Medco, we were focusing on the payer, which in the US is typically large employers or the government, on like, what does it mean for the population? How can we help you with these novel technologies? And so that triple play mattered. I also had the opportunity to be like a chief development officer at a company called Myriad Genetics, which were the company that initially founded the breast cancer gene called BRCA, which is now what we test for hereditary cancer all the time for breast cancer. It's now standard of care, but that started in genetics, then specialists like oncology surgeons or oncologists or surgeons, and then moved out into the primary care settings like OB-GYN, and now is used broadly. It's one of the first discoveries that took years to go from there to the clinic, from the specialty labs all the way out to the general lab, and had the opportunity to take 11 different genetic products across 6 different business units and run operations and get those into the hands of patients and providers and paid for by payers, which was a great opportunity. From Medco, I had the opportunity, if you've heard about CRISPR, I had the opportunity to be CEO at a CRISPR-based diagnostic company. So we had PCR, now we have a new technology called CRISPR, and how are we using that for diagnostics? And it was the first time I was CEO, able to actually look at all parts of the business, operations, R&D, finance, and really look at how we differentiate products, and where they work and where they don't. Something like CRISPR doesn't work in a central lab, but when you really want to do something very inexpensive and simple in a device that you could buy over the counter at a pharmacy, it was a great technology. And so pivoted that technology into a new market where it made sense, where it was differentiated, and it was growth. But this was a small scale. This was one product. This was about 150 employees. And so a year ago, I joined G&DX and had the opportunity to put that mindset into play, running as COO, R&D, the technology organization, the product organization, medical affairs, and other parts of the organization to really move our technology at scale. At G&DX, we have over 1,500 employees. We have a huge product that's been in the market for years with a ton of different opportunities in different segments. And now I have the opportunity to kind of put all these pieces together and deliver that throughout the healthcare system, both here in the US and globally.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. And 80% market share is almost like that sweet spot where you're not the monopoly, but you're dominating. And I know we'll get to a little bit of talk around a similar company more in the healthcare IT space later that's got somewhere around that market share. But, fascinating, Bryan. I mean, you've been there through the evolution of science, but also the evolution of the industry. So really cool to hear how you've been like PCR, CRISPR, but also you worked at PBMs, you worked at the giant biotechs like Roche. I guess one other question I have for you, and I'm not sure if you're a fan of Ben Stiller or Meet the Parents, but I know that there's a joke in that movie that the main character grew up on a farm, but it was a joke. But I've actually heard that actually might be true in your background.
It's so funny. I absolutely, it is true. So my father was a pediatrician, but he was from Kansas. We grew up in rural inland San Diego. So I say San Diego, but it's not the beach. It was like an hour inland in the high mountain desert in the avocado ranch, and we had a little hobby farm too. So we had acres of avocados and persimmon trees, but we also had like cows, pigs, horses, goats. So we had our own produce, and we also shared produce around. And it was great because it taught me early on about hard work, and that, and a little bit about what sweat equity is. Like, getting up, helping the family, helping their business, getting out there early. I was doing that, at the age of 5, 6, every morning, every night, before and after school, and on the weekends with my father. And it was great. So pediatrician during the day, hobbyist farmer in the evenings and the weekend. It was a great upbringing.
That's amazing. And I would love to have your father on the podcast at some point for the ability to share that crossroads. So genomics, diagnostics, healthcare operations, how do you, and also we've talked about the evolution of the science. And so you're now at a massive scale. You're already at an organization that's scaled, but obviously you need to keep scaling. So how do you think about scaling an organization like G&DX, an environment where both the science and the technology are constantly evolving and regulation is also changing?
Yeah, I mean, throwing in regulation too, it's interesting. So, some are fast, some are slow. So science is evolving, but it doesn't evolve as fast as people think. So the understanding technologies around science evolve fast, but the actual understanding of the biology of diseases and things like that takes a long time for us to figure out. So, as I mentioned, G&DX has been in the business for 25 years. It spun out of the NIH, where they found like one of the very first genes for a rare disease 25 years ago. And they're like, how do we test people clinically for this? We need to have a regulated CLIA lab. And so they spun out G&DX from the NIH to say, I have one gene that I now know about out of over 20,000 genes that does one rare disease. And I want to test those patients for that, right? That over time grew to knowing 2 genes, 3 genes. Now it was 3 genes for epilepsy, or 4 genes for autism, or 6 genes for learning disability. And then over time, we discovered more rare mutations that caused a different gene for that same phenotype. And then we saw that people had overlapping phenotypes. You could have seizures and learning disability and have overlapping genes. And so all of a sudden we went from single genes to like panels of genes to now we actually just test the whole genome, because you might as well screen the whole genome. But if you imagine that we have technology to do the whole genome, like it took us a long time to sequence the first human. Now at G&DX, we're sequencing, over 1,500 humans per business day. That's huge scale. So the technology has scaled, but our knowledge, has now been to like 500, 600, 700 genes that cause certain conditions, thousands of different conditions. But the unknown is still far more vast than even the known today when it comes to the science. And the pool of unknowns or single hits that we have for kids in our database is huge. So you can imagine that in order to find something and know it's real, you need to see it at least twice. So we have thousands of single hit children in our database waiting for that second child to be tested by us to not only give that child a definitive diagnosis for the first time in their life. But also that child that we tested 2 years ago can now also get a definitive diagnosis. And so I always say it's like the power of the database of unknowns that we have that are waiting for validation is so large at G&DX and so large in our Infinity database that if you had any child, you'd want to bring them to G&DX to get testing because you have your best chance of finding that second hit to not only diagnose your child, but diagnose another child as well.
Can I ask like just a science question just to kind of help us understand a little bit? So let's say you've got 10 a person tests for you have a hit on 10 different genes, and like you said, like for autism there's 4 different genes or whatnot. So
Hundreds.
do those genes express themselves the same in other people based on other hits, even for the same condition? Like, does it express itself differently, or is it if you have, this particular gene, it's going to express itself the same in each individual?
No, I mean, genes express them differently. There's different penetrance. One of the things that people don't realize initially about rare disease is it's normally not inherited from your parents. It's a de novo or new mutation that happened when you came together as a sperm and an egg and were created. At that point in time, there was a mutation that occurred. And so it may have never been seen ever in the history of any sequence that we've ever seen before. And so when we find these new hits that are in you that are not in your parent, and then you look at which genes are associated with different phenotypes like seizures or cerebral palsy or developmental delay, we're enriching through our AI algorithms of like which genes are known, which ones are expressed, which hits are novel, and that comes together into a ranking of possible hits that then our team of over 150, 200 genetic counselors and geneticists pour through to then go and look with their knowledge of like, this is the thing that's causing it, or I really believe it is based upon all the information, but I need one more child to confirm this. And we're waiting. So we say, we think this might be it, but we're not certain. And then when all of a sudden we get that second child that has that same phenotype, the same symptoms, the same hit in the same location, we can say, wow, now we definitely know this is the exact cause of this issue.
It's fascinating. And coming from a generation where we were told we were all unique, it sounds like you're confirming that there is some truth to that statement. Now, you have all this data, and obviously you all are working to make it as usable and understandable. But yeah, how do you ensure that clinicians and families are taking advantage of the information that you all are uncovering about the patients?
Yeah, and it depends. Again, remember this odyssey that we're trying to shave off 5 years to 4 years. The way that this odyssey works is you, as a parent, you suspect something's wrong. You take your child to the pediatrician. The pediatrician says, I think something might be wrong, but let's wait and see. Kids develop all at different speeds. Like, let's go see what's happening. So you go away, you may come back in 3 months or 6 months to the pediatrician. At this point, you've seen what's happening. You've seen the progression of your child, and you're like, I definitely know there's an issue here. And the pediatrician goes, yeah, I think so, but I don't know what this is. Let's refer you to a specialist. So maybe you go, if you've had a seizure, maybe you go to a pediatric neurologist. If it's like developmental delay, you'll go to a developmental specialist, and you'll go to they'll refer you to a different doctor. And the wait times on these doctors can be like 6 months or longer. So you wait again as things are progressing and you're noticing these issues and you don't have any answers or solutions. And so you go to that specialist, and that specialist says, yeah, I think I heard about a couple of genes. I'm going to do a couple of gene panel that I heard about. And so they look at like 5, 6 things, like what I was telling you about, like things that we were doing over a decade ago, right? And they know that because that's the science that they're more familiar with. And that's okay. And so they do it, they find nothing. And this progresses, and they're like, well, let me just send you to a geneticist. And geneticists are not, there's like only around 2,000 practicing geneticists in the United States. And so your wait time is about a year or so. And you finally get to that geneticist. And these geneticists are the same people we hire to look at the data every single day. These geneticists are experts. So they know all about the DNA and all about the different genes and all about the various conditions that they see. which is great. And so they know the complexity of genomes, exomes, it's words that no one else knows, panels, slices. They know what this is. They've been doing this their entire career. So they know what to order, which is great. But that patient's waited 5 years to get to that test. And then they get our test because we have 10 geneticists use G&DX, and they get a result, and then they finally have an answer for what's causing this, and the kids can move on to a targeted therapy, advocacy groups. There's that anxiety of the search is over. I now know, I can understand, I can talk to other people that have the same condition. And so it's really empowering at that moment. But what we need to do with technology is a general pediatrician, the guidelines of the American Pediatric Association or the guidance just expanded that for learning disabilities and developmental delay, general pediatricians can order an exome or a genome from GeneDx and not have to go to a specialist. But they have concerns. They have fears. Like, I'm not a geneticist. I don't know what test to order. And if I knew what test to order, I mean, I've heard of GeneDx, but I don't know which test to order. Even if I did, what would I do with the results? I don't know what the results mean. I don't know what to do next. And so it's our job to meet them where they are, make it easy for them to order because they don't have time. Like, they're dealing with what diaper should I use? What formula should I use? I have a vaccine right now. I have a runny nose because it's flu season. Like, they don't have time to figure out like how to order a complex genetic test. So we have to make it easy. We have to let them know what to order. We have to help them with genetic counseling or like videos to support the patient. And we have to make the results so simple that they can know what to do next, like who to go to, who to refer, what medications are out there, what care pathways are there. And so that's the technology that we have to build in order to move this technology from specialists into the generalist population.
Let's take a quick break. At Health Data Movers, we know that data migration isn't just about moving information from point A to point B. It's about making sure your clinical and operational data is accurate, accessible, and secure, so your teams can focus on delivering care, not chasing records. Whether you're consolidating systems, switching EHRs, or sunsetting legacy data platforms, our data migration experts help you move confidently through complex transitions. We bring proven tools, repeatable processes, and deep healthcare experience to make your migration seamless. If you're planning a system change or even thinking about one, let's talk. You can learn more at healthdatamovers.com. Now back to the show.
Got it. So essentially, there's fear and uncertainty, not just in the patient area, but the provider is. It seems to be like is that out of all the obstacles you named, is provider the biggest hurdle that you all need to I guess get over to fully integrate the specialty lab data into core clinical workflows?
I mean, there's a lot of hurdles. We can go through them, but number one is, they have to order the test in the first place. They have to want to order it, right? So that fear is something that we have to empower them with solutions, but also empower them to be the hero. When you're a pediatrician like my father was, you're with children from the day that they first see you from when they're born to oftentimes when you're in your mid-20s. Like, people don't leave their pediatrician. Like, you need to go to find a new doctor. Like, your parents' insurance is covered. It's stopping at 26. Yeah. Like, you need to leave the pediatrician's office, right? And so this is an 18 to 26 year relationship with a families that have multiple kids, right? That pediatrician does not want to break that trust, break that family. They want to know what's going on. So it's easier to say, go to a specialist than have that conversation where if it's wrong, maybe they're unhappy with you, maybe there's blame or whatever. So it's easier for them to come back with a G&DX report than to be the one that has to go through it and not be a specialist. And so what we need to do, and what we are doing, is empowering them with the knowledge that they know what to order. It's easy to order. They have support all around them. And it would be so much better to give them a diagnosis so that the anxiety goes away, so that they can know where they go, and that referral is the right referral from day one, and that odyssey is shrunk to really a couple months instead of 5 years.
Sure. Now, we sort of got a teaser when we talked about 80% market share, so I'll get into it. So Epic Aura is large, very, very big in the specialty lab space, or it seems to be growing. And it seems to be transforming how lab data is exchanged and consumed across care settings. You kind of have alluded to it a little bit, but yeah, how does better integration change the experience for both the clinicians and the patients?
Yeah. So when you're a geneticist and you're a specialist, like to go in and you're used to big workups on patients, like it's okay to download a new technology like our portal, right? Like our ordering portal. It's okay for them to do that. It gives them a lot of tools to enhance and look at. They spend 15 minutes. It takes like 8 to 9 minutes to order in our portal with all of the various phenotypes and symptoms and information that powers our tests. And so that kind of works for them. But there's only 2,000 of them. It's easy to spend time with them. It's easy to educate them. They're the experts in this. But when you go out to the 60,000 pediatricians, you have to meet them where they are. They're in Epic. They use Epic as their number one choice for EHR integration. It's part of their systems. They want to be able to order in 1 minute. They want to be able to give us the symptoms without having to do anything. And integration in things like Epic through Epic Aura allows us to reach in a single implementation in one what's called IDN or integrated delivery network. We can actually see that there's hundreds of pediatricians in that network. They're all on one installation of Epic. And now that we're in Epic, they can just pull down their menu, see G&DX, see our one test, order it in 1 minute. We can pull all the symptoms from their records. And all of a sudden, what would have taken 8 minutes now takes less than 1 minute because of the integration. And we can go out there and activate all of these new customers that we couldn't do. That's one of the initial great benefits of being in something like Epic Aura and integrated in an EHR. And there's more. I'm happy to go through a couple more pieces of it. But the other challenge, I'll go through one that I really love. So let's say that we're integrated in this network and we're in Epic, and we've done many installations this past year with Epic Aura. We have a huge number of tests that you can order through Epic now in our integrations. But the people in those networks were geneticists and specialists. Now we can look and see all those other doctors, start activating them. They don't have to do anything, no portal, no education. They can just order the test. But again, they're still seeing patients with runny noses. They're seeing patients who need a vaccine. They're seeing patients who broke their arm. They're seeing patients who are not sure about, some mental health conditions, a whole bunch of different pieces, right? So rare diseases are not top of their mind. But the nice thing about being integrated in EHRs is we can see the data from our patients. We can see who has certain symptoms. We can work with the networks to put flags into the EHR to flag up that this patient maybe needs a test because of the symptoms that they're having. And so we can get out in front of it so that they don't have to necessarily find the patients. They actually can have flags in the EHR that actually show them where the patients are that they can test. And so together with Epic and yourselves, HDM and others, we are working on ways to work with those networks to then build those flags to make it easier for generalists to know when they should be ordering tests like the G&DX genome or exome.
Yeah, and as interoperability improves, we expect that'll be something that we see improve as well, right? So, like you said, being able to pull historic information on patients and recognize, like, hey, this would be a good candidate for a test. How do you think making that complex genomic data and the diagnostic data more accessible for providers? Like how do you see that going forward? Because like you said, they stay in Epic, but is there an opportunity for them, for better integration within Epic to just make that data better or more viewable? Are you talking adding additional information to patient charts? Like what do you mean when you talk about making the data more actionable?
Yeah, let me talk about actionable data in two different ways. The data that we need to help the patients at the right time, and then the data that the patients need where they're at. So let's start with the latter one first. So interoperability a patient, especially since this odyssey currently is 5 years and we're currently dealing with specialists and geneticists, this patient who may be in a rural part of the US, I mentioned that my father was from Kansas, right? So you're out in Kansas and there's no geneticist out there, near, Westmoreland where he's from. And so imagine if you're a child there in Westmoreland, Kansas, and you're having a developmental delay and you see your pediatrician, the pediatrician doesn't have anyone to refer them to in that network, right? So eventually you get referred to a specialist. So maybe you drive down to like Manhattan, Kansas, right? Now you're in a different, it's probably still Epic, but you're in a different install, right? A different doctor, a different IDN, and now you're seeing the specialist, and they're like, I ordered a test. Test is in there, but now they're like, oh, that test was negative. I don't know. I need to go to a geneticist, but the geneticist is at KU in Lawrence, Kansas. So that you have to drive 2 hours over to Lawrence, Kansas, and take your child to the geneticist who's in a completely different Epic installation in a different network, right? And so that geneticist orders the G&DX test. How does a pediatrician get that test today? Well, this is where interoperability matters, because if we're able to see where in which and all the different installs of Epic and all the different EHRs where that patient is, and then take that data, that results of our test, and put that back in to the specialist chart in Manhattan, Kansas, and back into the pediatrician's chart in Westmoreland, Kansas. Now everybody who takes care of that patient has the results where they're at in their EHR, and that's what interoperability does, is it allows the parent not to have to carry this binder full of paperwork and then like re-go through that at every step of the way. We are also empowering parents to have like more mobile ways to carry data around as well, because it's still important as interoperability is going. But that's one benefit of interoperability, putting data wherever we see the patient across the entire United States. Another piece of interoperability is our tests change over time, meaning as you get more symptoms and more information, it can hone the search for other causes that are causing your phenotypes. It's not just the fact that you had a seizure. Great, you had a seizure, but then all of a sudden, what happens if you have another symptom and another symptom? Those other symptoms may have other causes, and we are reevaluating it. But you don't want to have to keep coming to the doctor every time that you have a new symptom. You go to a different doctor, now you're back to your pediatrician or you're at the other specialist. By us being able to pull in data from the EHR, from all the different exchanges out there, and understand the longitudinal nature of a child's condition, we can proactively find the new symptoms, reanalyze, and then put the new data back into the system for all of those physicians. And so that interoperability goes both ways. The data stays with the patients, but the enhanced results can move along with the patients too as they progress.
I mean, especially when you think about reanalyzing, and so just that initial data point grows and becomes more and more valuable. So that's really impressive. You mentioned longitudinal data. Uh, let's talk a little bit about the regulation side of it. So we'll back away from the science. We want to do it right, right? So what does that mean when it comes to data governance, when it comes to security, and then the long-term usability of that patient's genomic data?
Yeah. I mean, everything that we do is HIPAA compliant, and patients, we care about patient trust as number one in our pyramid. Is security, data privacy always comes first. We understand how sensitive it is to have PHI, to have that trusted relationship that we've built in our space for 25 years, and so cybersecurity, all of this infrastructure is super important to build around that data. We've done that from day one, and we continue to advance that as others advance as well to try to get at data. We're protecting data as our number one focus. But then on top of it, the point about the health exchanges and interoperability is the fact that, the power of the EHR is to be able to get that data and to use it to help patients wherever they're at, right? And so again, to take the burden off the patients and get the best results wherever you can. So number one, we secure it. But number two, we need to pull all the information in, and try to take care of the patient as best we can. We fall under what's called the treatment paradigm, where when a physician is ordered a test and we need to understand symptoms of the patients to best find the genetic causes of their disease, we need to pull all of that history of data. But as I mentioned about reanalysis, you can have new symptoms as you age. When you get older and you develop, new things happen. And those other symptoms can then rechange what your results should matter and what you should do. And so we need to keep getting more information in a safe and secure way on those patients, through what we've built around HIPAA and different ways to tokenize, de-identify, and really protect data, number one, but number two, give the best care to patients.
Excellent. So, Bryan, as you look ahead, what excites you the most about the future of genomics, specialty diagnostics and integrated care? Obviously, you've been like PCR. I mean, the fact you worked on CRISPR is so cool. But obviously, there's great more things to come. We've talked about the speed. Tests are faster, integrations are faster. I'm not trying to lead you in any way. So these are just some things that are on my mind as we've been talking. But yeah, what really gets you excited? And then I'll add another piece onto that. What advice would you give to leaders trying to build for that future today?
Yeah, what I'll tell you what I'm excited about, and that is genomic-led care over your lifetime. So what I mean is, like, I often call it like genomes for life. As a geneticist, it's been something I've wanted from day one. Is your DNA is your blueprint. It's the architecture of what you build, all the things that you build in your body every day for the rest of your life as you develop. And so it'd be great to have that at day one. You mentioned, Tyler, like, it'd be great to have your dad come back on this podcast, but unfortunately, my father passed away from non-small cell lung cancer, right? And when I was at Myriad, I was working on the genomic medicines at Pfizer, genomic medicines based upon genetics that would treat, cancer in a specific way. And it was great. Like, these targeted therapies, my father had 2 different mutations. We were able to get him on 2 different targeted therapies that, gave him a time to get to my wedding. But what we're dealing with oncology is we're dealing with the last few years of somebody's life often. Or when we're dealing with Alzheimer's disease, we're dealing with the last decade of someone's life, right? And this is very critical, but it's like genetics impacting the end of life. When I came to G&DX and I realized that we're testing children in the NICU when they're born, or at their first milestone reports, or, we are now the leaders in genomic newborn screening, where we're doing work with the government funded efforts with Beacons, with the largest study for genomic newborn screening in Guardian study. We've also now, in the state of Florida, are funding efforts in genomic newborn screening, where we found that, in all of this, like, more than 3.4% of people who are born have a rare condition that's going to impact the first few years of their life. And we can do that before any symptom at the day of birth. And so I'm very excited about getting at that part of the odyssey, like before symptoms. But then once you're there, how can we have genomic-led care for the rest of your life when you're growing up, and then you have some anxieties or some other psychiatric conditions? We can help you. How do we help you learn about your own DNA? How do we help you when you're becoming an adult, when you're trying to get pregnant? All these other pieces throughout your life as you age, how can we help you? We can help people across their entire lifespan, but not at the end of their life, but at the beginning of their life. And that's what excites me the most.
Bryan, thank you so much for sharing that, and definitely appreciate the impact your father has had on you. What remarkable that he was a physician, and then yet you, not being a physician, but a PhD and a geneticist, were able to do something to affect his patient care, which is just incredibly inspiring. And also the theme of, we've talked about preventative care, health maintenance, I think it was a buzzword, but what you all are doing is like the true preventative care that really will bring the change in terms of better outcomes. So we just can't tell you how much we applaud you for the work you all are doing and moving the ball forward in so many different ways, from a technology perspective, but from a clinical perspective, most importantly.
Well, thank you. And it takes a team, and the team is not just G&DX, but it's the people we work with as well. It's Epics, it's yourself, Health Data Movers. It's everyone comes together to really help these children live their best life and get information as soon as possible. So I thank you, Tyler, too, and thank you, Ken, for having this opportunity to talk.
No, absolutely. We've really enjoyed the conversation, quite enlightening, and we wish you continued success and as you continue to shave off time on that diagnostic, the odyssey as you called it. So thank you again for joining us, Bryan.
Thank you both. Have a great one.
Thanks again for listening to Quick Hits, a healthcare technology podcast for healthcare technology professionals. Follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and don't forget to reach out to us with feedback, suggestions, or even people in the healthcare technology industry you think we should interview. Feel free to comment in the comments in Spotify or send an email to quickhits@healthdatamovers.com.